Ukraine's Zelenskiy compares Mariupol to Leningrad siege as Russia launches fresh strikes on Kyiv. Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelenskiy has compared Russia's brutal siege of the southern city of Mariupol to that of Leningrad in the Second World War, amid fresh shelling in the capital Kyiv on Thursday and anger at the Kremlin after Joe Biden called Vladimir Putin war criminal. Zelensky said late on Wednesday, "Citizens of Russia, how is your blockade of Mariupol different from the blockade of Leningrad during World War II? We will not forget anyone whose lives were taken by the occupiers." Between 1941 and 1944, German forces encircled and starved Leningrad, now called St. Petersburg, leading to the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people. Zelensky said it was still unclear how many had died or been injured in the airstrike on a theater in the city where hundreds of displaced people were believed to have been sheltering. Russia has also been accused of a strike on a swimming pool where pregnant women and young children had gathered and of shelling a convoy of cars carrying civilians fleeing the city. "Our hearts are broken by what Russia is doing to our people," he said. Early on Thursday, one person was killed and 3 injured by a Russian missile attack on a residential building in Kyiv, Ukraine's emergency services reported. Rescuers received a report of a building on fire in the Darnitsky district at 5:02 a.m. and found the 16th floor of the building was demolished and on fire. The southern port city of Mariupol has been facing a humanitarian catastrophe for days, and Russia continued its attacks on it and other Ukrainian cities on Wednesday, even as the two sides continued efforts at peace talks to negotiate an end to the fighting. Early on Thursday, one person was killed and 3 injured by a Russian missile attack on a residential building in Kyiv, Ukraine's emergency services reported. Rescuers received a report of a building on fire in the Darnitsky district at 5:02 a.m. and found the 16th floor of the building was demolished and on fire. The southern port city of Mariupol has been facing a humanitarian catastrophe for days, and Russia continued its attacks on it and other Ukrainian cities on Wednesday, even as the two sides continued efforts at peace talks to negotiate an end to the fighting. Earlier, the U.S. president voiced his view that his Russian counterpart was a war criminal, marking a significant change in his language. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said Biden's comments were unacceptable and unforgivable rhetoric, according to Russia's state-owned TASS news agency. In Mariupol, the city council said was a bomb on a building where hundreds of peaceful Mariupol residents were hiding. "We don't know if there are any survivors," one witness said. "The bomb shelter is also covered with debris. There are both adults and children there." About 1,000 civilians were allegedly hiding inside the theater, which was designated as a shelter for the displaced, including children and elderly people. Later, Pavlo Kirilenko, the head of Donetsk Regional Administration, claimed Russians had also targeted the Neptune swimming pool. "Now there are pregnant women and women with children under the rubble there," he said in a post on Telegram. "It is impossible to establish the number of casualties from these strikes." A witness who posted a video of the aftermath of the attack said the pool had been destroyed and efforts were underway to rescue one pregnant woman trapped in the rubble. Moscow denies targeting civilians, and Russia's defense ministry said its forces had not struck the building, RIA news agency said. A satellite photograph from March 14 and released on Wednesday by Maxar Technologies showed the word "children" in large Russian script painted on the ground outside the Red Roof Theater building. Ukraine's Ministry of Defense has described Mariupol as the worst front of the war. Mass graves have been dug on the outskirts of the city, and the bodies of men, women, and children have been left on the streets. More than 400,000 of its inhabitants are either without or with dwindling access to running water, food, and medical supplies. Local officials have said more than 2,500 have been killed. But the reality is that, because of the shelling, the dead cannot be counted. Ukrainian officials also accused Russian forces of shelling a convoy of cars of civilians fleeing the city, wounding at least 5 people, including a child. Local officials shared photos and videos of the aftermath of the alleged attack. Heavy artillery of the enemy forces fired on a convoy of civilians moving along the highway towards Zaporizhia, the governor of the region, Oleksandr Starik, said in an online post. More than 400 people, whom Ukrainian authorities have compared to hostages, remain trapped in a Mariupol hospital seized by Russian forces. It is impossible to get out of the hospital, one employee said on the Telegram social media platform. They shoot hard, we sit in the basement. Cars have not been able to drive to the hospital for 2 days. High-rise buildings are burning around. Russians rushed 400 people from neighboring houses to our hospital. We can't leave. Officials have told families to leave their dead outside in the streets because holding funerals is too dangerous. Witnesses tell of a city in chaos, under constant bombardment, which is becoming more and more difficult to escape. Thousands of people are trying to reach the city of Zaporizhia, where refugees are taking shelter, but according to the Ukrainian authorities, the Russians are trying to prevent citizens from fleeing. Taking Mariupol, which is 34 miles from Russia's border, would mark a strategic breakthrough for Vladimir Putin. The city lies between territory held by Russian-backed separatists in the Donbass region and the Crimean Peninsula, which was annexed by Moscow in 2014 and from where it has launched its assault on key southern towns in Ukraine.